Welcome back to Communicate Like This on Listenable. I'm Dan Perky. This is Lesson 2, your first communication tool. Now let's not get carried away from an expectation standpoint about how dramatically this course can change your life. In the first place, it depends on how well you already communicate. I've had people say that learning and using these tools has turned their lives around 180 degrees. But those people generally already weren't very effective in their communication previously. So there was more upside to start with. Plus, the positive impacts will accrue only if you actually use the communication tools we'll cover. Having knowledge is much different than putting that knowledge to work. Effective communication is both an art and a science. No one is perfect at it, and no one will ever be perfect at it, despite how many classes you may take on the subject. So don't expect perfection. What you should expect is improvement, so that what you say, and maybe more importantly, your true intent, is clear to others. The science part of effective communication is seen in the communication tools themselves. They form the foundation of knowledge available to use. The art of effective communication is how you employ those tools in your everyday life. This podcast course will teach you a number of practical communication tools that you can add to your communication toolbox. This is only episode 2 of only the first course. Over time, we'll build your expertise in effective communication to the point that you'll wonder why everyone doesn't communicate like this. It'll allow you to recognize various situations you may find yourself in and then be able to pull out the right communication tool or tools from your toolbox and apply them to the given situation. So let's not waste any time and move to give you a taste of what's to come by providing you with your first communication tool to start populating your communication toolbox. Now, this tool may not sound sexy, but it's fundamental to avoid miscommunication, misunderstandings, preventable arguments, and provide you less stress in your life. This tool is as fundamental to effective communication as water is to life, because even if you have 100 communication tools at your disposal, if you don't know when to apply them, then you're stuck. So, the first tool for you to incorporate into your interactions with others is awareness. Most people, when entering a discussion, don't give any thought to the process of communication. They only have whatever it is they want to say on their minds, and then they make sure that they get a chance to say it. They don't necessarily think ahead of time about an upcoming discussion. They just launch into it and then play it by ear from there. The communication tool of awareness is to approach any conversation with your radar on full alert to recognize when things are going off track. You need to be prepared with an understanding of what your communication toolbox contains. Now, you most likely won't utilize all of your tools, but you need an awareness of what they are before opening your mouth. Just that awareness is that you've got some secret weapons you can use once the conversation starts that will give you a certain amount of confidence that you can control whatever scenario is thrown at you. Perky's law of the 7 P's is proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance. Awareness is that prior planning. For me, going into discussions, I have basically 3 communication tools that I consciously think about before opening my mouth. I'm specifically on the lookout for situations during the conversation in which I can use these tools ahead of when I might need them. We'll talk about these 3 tools in subsequent lessons, but just for your curiosity, those tools are who will do what by when, or WWW for short, paraphrasing, and names, numbers, dates, and deadlines, also known as specificity. I've got these 3 tools figuratively tattooed on my brain because I know how frequently they come up in interactions with others, particularly in business settings. My awareness of having these tools at my disposal and my awareness of actively looking for opportunities to use them are what prevents misunderstandings. Now, Awareness is tough at this stage of the course because you really don't have any tools in your toolbox at this point to use. It's hard to be aware of something if that something doesn't exist, other than you can be aware of the fact that you have nothing to be aware of. But what you can be aware of is your internal gut feeling that can tell you when a conversation is going off the rails, if you're paying attention. Try to be aware of spots where what you might have said is getting interpreted or misinterpreted by the other person. Be aware of making sure your understanding of what the other person is intending is correct. It's sort of like being a sports commentator. They talk about the play on the field, but they aren't actually on the field playing. So when you're talking to someone, your awareness needs to be that you're not only on the playing field, but you're also commenting inside your head on the discussion itself. Maybe it goes something like this. Well, Bob, it's a beautiful day in the conversation pit today. Blue skies and temperature in the upper 70s. Did you spot where Ann just made a point in the conversation that could be construed in a couple of different ways? Well, I sure did, Jim. Jessica's been known to make these types of comments before, and people generally walk away confused. Now the question is, what will Dan say to clarify things? Let's see if he can step up before things get out of hand. Looks like he might be looking through his communication toolbox for something to use before either or both of them gets confused. Yes, it looks like he's going to pull paraphrasing out of the toolbox, Bob. Let's listen in and hear what happens. Okay, maybe a little exaggerated, but you need to have this internal commentary with yourself at the same time as you're talking and listening. That's the way to communicate effectively. It's hard if you haven't trained your mind to operate this way. Awareness of the act of the discussion versus the topics of the discussion itself is what separates a good communicator from a bad one. In summary, don't just fall into your old routines and launch into a conversation. Train yourself to have an awareness of the component parts of a discussion at the same time as you're discussing something. Inside your head, be an objective, neutral, third-party commentator on what's going on with tone of voice, body language, statements that could have multiple meanings, and other things that can affect how effective the communication is. That awareness will allow you to recognize potential problems and head them off before they become actual problems.